Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Nürburgring in Germany for the latest instalment of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Race 31 of the season coming up. It's the 10th event of 11. We've got 3 races here this weekend and then 3 more to come at Hockenheim. And then we'll know who is going to be our 2015 champion. The cars on the grid. We had a warm day yesterday. Very sunny conditions for the qualifying sessions. But we woke up this morning to thick fog and a slight delay to proceedings in the qualifying sessions which came before this. And much cooler temperatures as well. The drivers, though, are on the grid ready to go for this latest round of the championship, with it finally poised between the top 4 in the point standings. Felix Rosenqvist is the points leader. So close he has come to being the champion in years gone by. He had a good start to the season, then 1 or 2 rocky patches, particularly at Po, where he didn't get onto the podium, but he has strung some run together at Zandvoort, the 3 races there, at Spielberg, and then last time out at Portimao, he finished on the podium in every single race. So it's 9 podiums on the bounce, including 4 race wins in amongst those 9 last races. So Felix Rosenqvist got 378 points. Antonio Giovinazzi is second on 343.5 points. As we see, one of the newcomers to this very full grid, the Latvian driver there, Harold Schlegelmilch, who's got some Formula 3 experience in the past with the Artline engineering team. He's raced in German F.3. He's also done a little bit of Formula Renault racing, some GT racing. And then third in the championship, Charles Leclerc in his debut season, 324.5 points and 309 points after a very good weekend at Portimao. Back on form for the British driver Jake Dennis, who's still very much in this championship fight, with his 6th win of the season coming at Portimao and a couple of second place finishes. So I'm Chris Hartley to talk you through the race today, and alongside me, it's a very good morning to Dave Richardson.
Chris, Formula 3 just couldn't be more exciting. It's absolutely, the season this year has been blistering, and you and I have been the beneficiary of some conversations as we look at our pole sitter, Felix Rosenqvist, quelle surprise. We've been the beneficiary of some conversations of names that are being bandied around that are going to be coming into the FIA Formula 3 European Championship in the next couple of years. We're not going to tease you with those names now because nothing is confirmed, but you know, for the next few seasons, it's looking just as exciting for FIA Formula 3. There's Nick Cassidy.
Yeah, Nick Cassidy, who's dropped in and out of the championship. He's concentrating this year on Japanese Formula 3, in which he is the joint championship leader with a round to spare, which happens in a few weekends' time. So Nick Cassidy, who's popped up in the championship a couple of times over the last couple of seasons, going well in the first qualifying session, didn't go quite so well in the second qualifying session, which determined the grid for races 2 and 3. But the New Zealander is second on the grid. He would have been third, but George Russell, who has been fantastic in qualifying of late, had an engine change, so gets a 10-place grid penalty. George was actually second fastest, but will start, I'm afraid, 12th for the races. Callum Ilott with his best qualifying session so far, another rookie this season. The Carlin driver, pretty handy in the first round at Silverstone, but he's been consistently picking up the points. I spoke to him yesterday, felt like he's been improving in himself, but slightly frustrated that results haven't really shown that. But qualifying has been such a big thing, and he's sorted that out with a very good, 4th fastest time, and that put him third on the grid with George Russell being penalised. There's Jake Dennis, who was pretty cool and happy about 4th place on the grid, the Prema Power Team driver, who's good mates with Felix Rosenqvist. Said he maybe hasn't quite got the pace to match Felix, but he's pretty happy with the car all in all.
P3 in the championship for the Van Amersfoort Racing Charles Leclerc, who has perhaps not been quite as prolific over the last few races as I expected him to be. He's been a bit quiet by his standards, Chris. You've spoken to him. Any reason for that?
Qualifying has struggled a little bit. He was one of the best qualifiers of the first 4 or 5 races of the championship, and he's thereabouts, but he's not quite been where he has been. He's been 5th, 6th, in and around there, whereas he was quite often on the front row of the grid for the first few rounds of the championship, and when it's so competitive, it's hard to move forward. Antonio Giovinazzi, who had a fantastic weekend at Zandvoort last weekend to win the Masters Championship in that one-off event. The first Italian to do so in its long and illustrious history, and he romped off into the distance. George Russell was his closest rival in 2nd place.
Will that be a nice confidence boost for Giovinazzi coming into this round, do you think, to take that Masters title?
I think so, yeah. I mean, not all of the big guns were there.
No.
Rosenqvist wasn't there, Dennis wasn't there, Leclerc wasn't there. But, there were still some very good drivers on the grid, and he did a stellar job, really. He was pretty untouchable, particularly the qualifying race, which he won by a country mile. Mikkel Jensen there has had a good qualifying session. 7th on the grid for this one, he will be. 8th on the grid, Marcus Pommer. Doing okay, the Motor Park driver, Motor Park, the German team, with lots of history and lots of expertise, but new to this particular championship, running quite a few drivers. Last time I commentated on Marcus Pommer at this circuit was about 5 years ago, and he was racing in Formula 2. He had a good campaign, but a bit of a nightmarish weekend, so hopefully it will go better for him here. Speaking to Jake Dennis as well, he says this is a circuit which has not been kind to him in the past in either Formula 3 or Formula Renault. When he raced in the Euro Cup, has had all sorts of technical issues here in the past, so he says he kind of owes me one this circuit, he feels. Hopefully he'll have better luck. Sergio Sette Câmara on the podium at Zandvoort, just reminding himself of the way around the circuit here. But the Brazilian is another driver that's really improved in the last couple of rounds. Yep, this way, that way, this gear, brake here, just getting it programmed into his mind. Fair enough, I suppose, though, because, unlike, lots of rookies in the championship this year, but unlike some of the drivers, he's learning the circuits. He's not that familiar with the tracks. So he comes from 9th on the grid.
Arjamani is next that we see then, who rounds out the top 10 on the grid. Arjamani there in the number 29 car, who at Portimao was being coached by Karen Chandhog.
Yep. And really nice chap is Arjamani, front runner in the BRDC Formula 4 Championship last year. Spoke to him yesterday before the second qualifying session. He said, I'm kind of just losing out a little bit everywhere on the lap. There's no one sector where I'm struggling. It's just a bit here and a bit there. And he says it's just a confidence thing with the car. You've got guys like Felix Rosenqvist who know the car, know the circuit like the back of their hand. He's having to learn the car and the circuit at all the rounds. But Arjen, who's run by the Van Amersfoort team, who ran Max Verstappen so successfully to a number of race wins and third in the title last year, he's doing a good job this year. He's had certainly some memorable races, the Indian driver. He's only 19th in the championship, but he's been up to the top 6 a few times. He had a podium at Zandvoort as well in the championship round there, and he was in the top 6 at Zandvoort last weekend at the Masters race as well. So things looking good for him. If he sticks with the championship for another season, I think we'll really see him moving on next year. So there is one of our key championship contenders. A nicer man in the paddock you will not find, Antonio Giovinazzi. Very laid back, but let me tell you, when he needs to, be ruthless on the track, he can be, can't he?
Yes, it was just a few weekends ago, of course, where he was out of a single-seater and into a DTM car, sitting in for Timo Scheider in Russia, and did a very, very creditable job as well. That's a lovely shot of the Jake Dennis car, and Jake Dennis there, of course, with support from Racing Steps Foundation. Yeah,
complaining a slightly sore back this weekend. He's one of the taller drivers, and he's a bit cramped up in that cockpit. He's had a long season of lots of races, lots of testing as well, and just starting to feel the effects now. Super fit guy, but so there's a lot of him to try and cram into that car.
And we should make clear, not son of Ron Dennis.
Not son of Ron Dennis, no, but the legendary Steve Dennis, top kart racer. So there's Jake's mate, Felix Rosenqvist. These two seem to get on like a house on fire. And yes, lots of people, there's talk that Ron Dennis' son might be coming into the championship at some point in the future, and then some people jumped to the conclusion that he was already here, and it was Jake Dennis, but it's not. And Felix was quite happy to make fun of all of that on Twitter, apparently, winding his teammate up. But Felix is on fantastic form here. It's the must-win season for Felix. We've said this a number of times because he's been second in the championship, third in the championship. He is far and away the most experienced driver on the grid in terms of the number of races he's done, the number of race wins he's had. He's on his 14th pole position of the season alone here. And that doesn't mean it gets any easier, though, because you get these quick drivers coming in like Charles Leclerc. You get the drivers who've been in for 2-3 seasons like Jake Dennis and Antonio Giovinazzi, also hugely competitive. But he has started to put this run together now, as I say, with 9 podiums on the bounce, included in that 4 race wins. He won 2 of the races at Portugal. Prema Power Team, who were the championship winning team for the last couple of seasons as well, with Esteban Ocon last year. And they just seem to give a good car almost every round here with all their expertise and set up, the Italians. And even though Jake Dennis said the car didn't feel brilliant at the last round at Portimao, they were up there and winning between them in the races.
It was really interesting at Portimao that Prema seemed to have unlocked something at that circuit that others hadn't. And it was really interesting to watch over the course of the weekend how they were beginning to unlock little bits more. Every other team were beginning to catch up. Okay, so Nürburgring, race 31, then in what is a long and arduous season for the young stars that race in FIA Formula 3. Again, we're reaching the sharp end of the championship, aren't we? And it is as competitive and as compelling as ever.
Well, it's 28 actually, isn't it? I think the graphics wrong there. We had 9 rounds so far, so it's getting towards crunch time for the championship. There is a possibility it could be decided this weekend. It seems unlikely, but you never know if one of the championship contenders has a blinder and others struggle.
Fritz won't like that. He will not like being the centre of attention. Fritz van Amersfoort from the Van Amersfoort team, as we watch Charles Leclerc there in the number 7 car. And there, good shot of the Nürburgring circuit as they're down through the Hatzenberg turn. Here's the grid then. It's Rosenqvist and Cassidy, and then it's Eilert and Dennis and Leclerc, Giovinazzi, Jensen, Pommer, Setakamara, and Arjun Maini then rounding out the first 5 rows of the grid.
Yep, that's the top 10 as it stands. And watch out as well, as I say, for the driver who starts 12th, because he was really second fastest in qualifying. He was second fastest in qualifying. Had to change an engine on the Carlin car, and that means automatically he gets a 10-place grid penalty. The other driver that has also picked up a 10-place grid penalty is Alessia Laurandi. The ex-kart racer, the rookie, the Italian, was 17th fastest, has been pushed back to 27th. Because if you change an engine, you automatically get a 10-place grid penalty for the next 3 races. Incidentally, George Russell saying what a fantastic job that Carlin did, because they discovered just before the qualifying session that he got this issue with the engine, and they had just about half an hour to change an engine, and they did it. He only missed the first 2 or 3 minutes of qualifying, went out and banged it into the second fastest time. So fantastic effort for the BRDC Autosport Young Driver of the Year from last year. There we see 3.6 kilometres this circuit, and with a capacity grid of cars, trying to get a lap time in qualifying yesterday was not easy. It was pretty crowded out there. So maybe another driver to watch out for is another of the Prema drivers, Dave. Lance Stroll, the Canadian, who's really got his act together the last few rounds. He's been really quick in qualifying and the races. He was really quick in free practice, in the top 3 in the second qualifying session, but he got traffic in the first qualifying session, which is why he only starts 11th on the grid for this one.
You're right, and there we just had a vision of Lance Stroll's father on the left-hand side of the picture there as drivers. Now, if you're on the front row or the first couple of rows, you've got a long while to wait before this packed grid all comes together and we get the green flag from the marshal at the rear of the pack, which will release the cars away. 33
cars lining up on the grid for this race. Even at the end of the season, it's a busier grid than it's been throughout the entire course of the 12 months, really. Lots of drivers tasting it out, I think, for next year as well. There's Felix Rosenqvist then. Can he get another race victory here? It will be a hat-trick if he does. The red lights come on. The race is about to get underway. Nick Cassidy, his teammate, is alongside as the race gets underway here at the Nürburgring. It looks like another good start for Giovinazzi. Watch for the yellow Giovanni Ryan car. And a good start for Dennis as well. He's going to try and get himself into 3rd place. It's going to be 3 by 3 going into the first turn then at the hairpin. Bit of contact there. I think Dennis got a little touch from behind, and he sends out wide then Giovinazzi. So the 2 fast starters, Dave, despite all of their efforts, are going to end up losing 3, 4, 5 places here. Callum Eilert, I think, was getting at the inside line there and caused them both the problem, so they ran out wide. Callum gets stuck in there and gets a very good start, but it is the top 2 that stay as they are. Eilert there in the Red Bull livery is there in 3rd place and having to defend his position now from Charles Leclerc, who's also benefited from all of that. He's in 4th.
Well, Jake Dennis was the big loser there, wasn't he? He got punted out. We just saw Michele Beretta there going out onto the grass, and it is, every single turn is going to be a pinch point right at the start of the race because so many cars as Rosenqvist begins to gap now, isn't he? And of course he's the one that's been unaffected by that. A whole gaggle of car there, and is that damage to the front of Dennis's car?
Well, let's hope not from his point of view. It was a high shot going into the first corner. It looked like there might have been a bit of contact, and Giovinazzi was trying to go around the outside, so he had to go out wide himself. Eilert went down the middle of everybody and gained positions. But, of course, being on pole position away from all that, Felix Rosenqvist. Bit of bad luck as well for Matt Solomon. 2 or 3 cars running wide there, and he was in the wrong place at the wrong time there and had to take evasive action. So Matt Solomon losing positions as a result of others' incidents there.
Sure enough, car number 2, Jake Dennis, has been shown the black and orange flag, so there is damage to the Jake Dennis car, and we can see him tumbling down the order, I'm sorry to say.
Disaster for a championship contender here. Black and orange flag means you've got to go off the circuit. There's a technical issue with your car, which is usually related to bits of bodywork hanging off or fluid coming out of the car, which is deemed to be dangerous for everybody else out there. So, absolute shame for Jake, who is the second most winning driver of the year. He's taken 6 race wins this year, but hasn't quite had the consistency of one or two others. Giovinazzi's back in 11th place after that delay as well, so he's now trying to work his way up the order, trying to get ahead of Sergio Sette Camara there, who's in the blue and white motor park car, the Brazilian.
And Giovinazzi has got Gustavo Menezes right behind him, hasn't he? Who's running in P12 at the moment. The 2 bright yellow cars there, as you say. Sergio Sette Camara in the number 23 car is running in P10 at the moment. There is Marcus Pommer in car number 34, you can see. Running in P6, he's chasing down Mikkel Jensen. Somebody that really impressed me at Portimao, who's running in P8, is Santino Ferrucci.
From 13th on the grid. He's made up 5 places already. So the young American, who's only in his, well, it's his second season, but it's his first full season really, because he only did half of 2014. Doing a good job here. Look at this. That's defensive driving, isn't it? On the run down into the corner, going from Arjun trying to fend off Lance Stroll. Lance going around the outside here. That's a brave move on the way to the first corner. It doesn't quite pay off though, and the Canadian has to sit tight, and then he actually has to defend his own position from Sergio Sette Camara, and they've all got Giovinazzi coming after them.
Credit to him for having a go though.
Yeah. He's not shy of having a go, as Lance Stroll. He's an entertaining driver as Giovinazzi steals a position there. Good move on a part of the course you don't often see overtaking, as he gets past Sette Camara. And he's got his teammate trying to get in the action as well. Another American driver, Gustavo Menezes, in the other bright yellow Giovinazzi IAM car. So back up into the points now for Giovinazzi, and every point might count in this championship, the way it's going. But there is Felix Rosenqvist leading the race. His nearest 2 rivals in this race are not championship contenders either.
But the 1, 2, 3 of Rosenqvist, Cassidy and Eilert really have broken away from the rest of the pack here, haven't they? Rosenqvist with a margin of a second as they all head through this NGK chicane, and moving up the order there for Topoldi.
So here's a replay of the start. Another great start from Felix Rosenqvist. Giovinazzi, you can see, well quick off the line, wasn't he? Yeah. But it was when they got to the braking zone that it all went a bit pear-shaped. So look at Callum Eilert there, trying to go for the inside line. Dennis makes a good start. They're 3 together, and I think the contact came from Leclerc into the back of Dennis. Giovinazzi had nowhere to go but off the track to avoid Dennis, who was forced out wide. And Callum Eilert just drove past all of them and got himself up to 3rd place. Which is of course where he started, but he was definitely under threat there. A bit of Jake as his car, the Prema Power team examining what the problem could be. We haven't seen this yet, but Jake has been into the pits for a nose change. And of course he's going to be well out of the points now, I'm afraid. Stone last, a lap down. Just gone over the start-finish line, 33rd I'm afraid for Jake Dennis. So much frustration, and he'll have to try and make the most of the other 2 races now this weekend. Callum Eilert making the most of this though. He's not going to be as high up the grid for the races later on in the weekend. The second session didn't quite work out as well for him. He was 11th quickest in the second qualifying session. He'll be put up to 10th because of George Russell's unfortunate problem with his engine. George, incidentally, is currently running in 13th place, so he's actually lost out. He hasn't gone forward as I thought he might.
So top 3 then, and then we see into P4 there is Charles Leclerc, then it is Mikkel Jensen, then it's Pommer and Ferrucci, and Arjun P8 with Lance Stroll P9, and as you rightly said, Giovinazzi into the points, P10, and that is the Giovinazzi IAM car of Antonio Giovinazzi that we watch right now, centre of the screen.
I think it might be quite good fun watching Tonio try and charge his way through now.
You're right.
He's certainly not going to be satisfied with 10th, is he? If he gets a chance, he's going to try and get up the order and get as many points as he can. It could be quite lively there because he's got Lance Stroll who he's trying to get past, who's also a quick driver, who is also, trying to make his way forward. Actually, Stroll has dropped back, hasn't he, from Arjun, who's doing a really good job in 8th place, the Indian driver. There he is in the yellow and white Van Amersfoort car, and there is one of his teammates, Charles Leclerc. Now
he's under pressure a bit here from Jensen, isn't he?
Yeah, Mikkel Jensen going well in 5th place. Good start from 7th. I know we had a couple running wide, but he made the most of that. the Muka Motorsport driver. And he's definitely shadowing Charles Leclerc, who's been pretty quick this weekend so far, but not on the sort of mega pace that we've come to expect from him after that brilliant start to the year he had.
You're right. Jensen now, though, having to switch disciplines really to defence over Marcus Pommer, and then Pommer himself has got Santino Ferrucci, who we know just how keen Ferrucci is to move up the order. So that little gaggle together there, that's going to be very exciting. Where are we? Lap 5 of 25, so very, very early stages of this race.
Meanwhile, Felix Rosenqvist has set the fastest lap of the race. Quickest in Sector 1, quickest in Sector 2, quickest in Sector 3, 121.395 seconds. There is a newcomer, Harold Schlegelmilch, the Latvian driver, trying to gain positions here, move himself up the order. At the moment, he's 32nd behind Niki Pola.
That, of course, brand new car into the championship, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So, a big ask, especially at this level, with this amount of competition to hop in and expect it to be, up there in the pack. But they'll use this to develop the drive of the car, and perhaps we'll see more of him next season. Felix Rosenqvist is on another flying lap here, fastest in the first 2 sectors. So he's trying to break away now from Nick Cassidy, who's there in second place, the double Toyota racing champion from New Zealand. Callum Ilott looking for his first ever podium in his first season. Not only, let's remind you, of Formula 3, but of car racing. There he is, Callum Ilott. He's come straight out of karting, much like Max Verstappen did last year. Alessio Lorandi has done the same. Charles Leclerc 4th. Now, you look at the contrast, the form of Felix Rosenqvist of late, who can't stop finishing on the podium, and then you look at Charles Leclerc, who is 3rd in the championship. The first 10 races of the year, 9 of them, Charles Leclerc was on the podium. The last 10 races, coming into this one, he hasn't been on the podium at all. He's been picking up points, 4th, 5th, 6th.
I think he's going to lose out here as well, because Jensen has gone back to attacking him and really keeping him under pressure. And it was the point I was making really right at the beginning of the programme, Chris, that Leclerc looked really, really good at the beginning of the season. Seems to really have gone off, and you say in conversation with him, as he's really under pressure now. Jensen really is up in the game, isn't he? And Leclerc is having to defend like never before. Of course, Jensen remains under threat from Marcus Pommer and Santino Ferrucci as well. And there is Antonio Giovinazzi, who is running in P10. But there is Leclerc and Mikkel Jensen. Then it's P4, P5. This little battle that is underway here, and it's Santino Ferrucci behind the car of Marcus Pommer as they all go through the NGK chicane. Not much between any of them.
Not at all. Mikkel Jensen then, a Danish driver in that number 27 Muka Motorsport car, but with lots of experience of this track. In fact, he describes it as his second home, because he raced in the German Formula Masters Championship, which he won, and knows the circuit very well indeed. So he's definitely itching to get past Leclerc into 4th place before the top 3 get away. Is Nabil Jeffrey, had a good top 6 finish at Zandvoort last weekend in the Masters. The Malaysian driver coming under threat here, and I think about to lose a place on the way into the braking zone. Looks like he has. Alex Albon, who we haven't really talked about yet, the driver who's been going so well in his first season of the championship. Really disappointing qualifying yesterday, particularly for the 2nd and 3rd races, but he's 14th on the grid for this one. And Alex Albon, who's been on the podium several times this year, and he's one of the leading rookies, trying to make his way into the points if he can.
Leclerc now has broken away a little bit from Mikkel Jensen, who's probably preferred to just back off a little bit and not run in the dirty air, and we'll have another charge, one suspects, for that P5 place in due course. There's Antonio Giovinazzi then running in P10. Lance Stroll ahead of him is P9.
The 16-year-old Callum Ilott has set the fastest first sector of anybody in the race so far. So only 1.2 seconds behind Nick Cassidy now is Callum, as we see Charles Leclerc fighting away, wrestling the wheel, coming out of the chicane there to try and keep it under control as he came out of the NGK chicane. So it is Rosenqvist, the championship leader, that leads the way, looking for his 10th win of the season. Nick Cassidy in 2nd place. Callum Ilott going well in 3rd position. Charles Leclerc 4th there, you can see. 5th in the orange 27 Muka Motorsport car is Mikkel Jensen, the Danish driver. Marcus Pommer in his home country in 6th place. Santino Ferrucci with a good start from 13th up to 7th. Arjun Maini in 8th place. Lance Stroll is 9th. Giovinazzi still stuck in 10th place and just about in the points.
It's extraordinary that Rosenqvist Castelli have got away, and there is a huge gap before we get back to Charles Leclerc in P4, and then a whole gaggle of cars behind. There's Callum Eilert then running in P3, who's just a second back off of Cassidy, who is P2, and Felix Rosenqvist has a 3-second advantage at the front of the pack at the moment, but all three of them really have broken away to the tune of some 12 seconds from P4 and then the rest of the order.
That's right. So there is Callum Eilert keeping that gap just over a second to Nick Cassidy, so you're at the front of the shot there in second place. The European karting champion last year in the KF Championship. Callum Eilert with Red Bull backing, with a great team, Carlin Motorsport, and all of their Formula 3 success over the years, and single-seater success. And one of the drivers with the VW engine, the race leader, Felix Rosenqvist, both powered by the Mercedes.
And there in that shot, you could see it was virtually the length of the start-finish straight, wasn't it, between P3 and P4. So they all cross the timing line now, and Jensen just once again just having to swap into defence mode from the attack from Marcus Pommer, who is running in P6 right behind him. Then Santino Ferrucci, who is running P7. And then behind Ferrucci, of course, Arjun Maini, and then Lance Stroll and Giovinazzi.
34.5 points clear is Felix Rosenqvist in the championship of Antonio Giovinazzi. He's going to get close to doubling that if it stays like this, because he's going to pick up 25 points. And at the moment, Giovinazzi is only going to pick up a single point for finishing in 10th place. Dennis is not going to be in the points, although the car is going quickly now, albeit way down the order at the back in 33rd position. But he was, at least when he got the car back out, able to test it, and it looked fine, and he got some reasonably good lap times, which bodes well for the races later on in the weekend. Rosenqvist has just crossed the finish line then. Through he goes with a 121.6. For the first time in a while, somebody's quicker than him, and that's Nick Cassidy, who's a 10th quicker. He's still 3 seconds behind. Nick, though, has pulled away from Callum Eilert, who's a couple of tenths behind him on that lap. So the gap's opened out to 1.2 seconds from Cassidy back to Eilert. There is Leclerc then, and this sort of bottleneck that he's causing in 4th place. Mikkel Jensen coming back at him now, isn't he, after a couple of quiet laps?
Yes, I think Mikkel Jensen has just decided for the last couple of laps really to get out of the dirty air and just focus on being behind. That, of course, just allowed Pommer to get ever closer to him. But I think you're right. I think Jensen is just turning the wick up again once more, and will go for another attack on Charles Leclerc. You're absolutely right, because the whole gaggle of cars that are tucked up behind that P4 driver, Charles Leclerc, at the moment. And of course, that is playing into the hands to the top three of Rosenqvist, Cassidy and Eilert, who are just, well, so far up the road, it's untrue. Really are in their own little pack. So the Lance Stroll car there, we can see car number 25, which is running in P9. And this is Jake Dennis back in again, because it's the new nose on the front, isn't it, which we saw being replaced. So that's the second time in for Jake Dennis.
Yeah, and I think that's them pulling him out of the race now. Let's save the car.
Yep.
See, they're putting their wet tyres on just to take it back to the garage. Let's save our tyres, of which there is a limit on what you can use during the course of the weekend. Let's save the engine. There is no point pounding around in 33rd position, because you're not going to get any points. So we've tested the car. We know it's okay. You did a couple of decent laps. Let's save it for later on, which is, I think, absolutely the right decision.
Great shame for Jake, though, isn't it? Because, as you say, you know, his position in the championship with Felix Rosenqvist, who, you know, looks odds-on to bank Max, doesn't he?
Yeah, of those in the championship fight, Jake's had the most non-point scoring finishes, so he's had the most wins, but he's also had you know, a number of races where I'm afraid hasn't been able to pick up points. That'll be the 8th time this season that he doesn't finish in the points. I think it's his 4th out-and-out retirement. But he's not out of it yet, so he's got good grids for races 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But Rosenqvist has definitely had the edge. I mean, at one point in the second qualifying session yesterday, up until the last 2 or 3 minutes, Rosenqvist was half a second quicker than anybody. It was pretty immense, really. In the end, I think it was 3/10 quicker. But, you know, he's been going out, not doing that many laps in qualifying, just banging in what he needs to bang in, and he's just looked super confident, super laid back. I mean, he has won everything, hasn't he, in terms of Formula 3, apart from this championship. He's won at Macau, he's won the Masters, he's won the Po Grand Prix. It's just this one that he needs to tick off the list. And, you know, if he'd had perhaps more funding, he might have been off trying things like GP3 or GP2. But he hasn't had, you know, immense amounts of sponsorship behind him. So he's really trying to make a name for himself by winning the championship this year. Doing a good job at the moment. Jake Dennis in. I think maybe he went out on those
He
wets,
did go
actually.
out.
Yeah,
He did go
did a
out.
lap on them. I thought they were just putting them on to take him back to the pits. So just a test session this has now become for Jake. In fact, now he does get out of the car. And you can see what I mean about him being a tall driver, can't you? Might be the tallest driver in the paddock, actually. So disappointment, I'm afraid, for Jake Dennis. Charles Leclerc in 4th place has a chance of, there he is in fact, a chance of wrapping up the rookie championship this weekend. He's 106 points clear of George Russell. I know it's not the main thing he wants to win is the overall championship, but it looks like he could well wrap that up at least this weekend, Charles Leclerc.
Now, these top 3 that we watch as Rosenqvist, then Cassidy and Eilert go through, have a margin of 16 seconds over the rest of the pack. That's incredible, isn't it? The pace that these 3 are showing them. Felix Rosenqvist, bear in mind, has got some 3.1 seconds over Nick Cassidy. Look, wait a short while before the rest of the pack come into the shot, and led by Charles Leclerc, who's running in P4.
The gap's growing as well in terms of the pace difference between the top 3 and the others. So they're now going about a second a lap quicker than anybody behind them. At the start of the race, they were, you know, 3 or 4 tenths quicker on average. But you know, the gap is growing in terms of how much quicker they are. So they've been quick, and they seem to have been able to look after the tyres a bit better. Not that tyre wear has really been an issue here. Even at the end of qualifying sessions yesterday, people were able to get good times. So it's not too hard on the tyres at this circuit. Bit of action here in the midfield. Pietro Fittipaldi just behind, just at the head of that group now, and making another place up is Alex Albon. He's deep into the corner. Can he make it stick? Yes, he can. Get a Raoul Hyman there, the South African driver. There's another BRDC F4 graduate, and the West Tech driver having to concede the position there. So that's a change for 13th. Alex Albon making a place up here, but he's still some way away from the points.
And whilst that was going on, George Russell having a go as well, and continues to have a go now at Raoul Hyman. George Russell, of course, suffering that grid penalty because of the engine change. And you know, were extolling his virtues of how quick he was in quali.
Yeah, George, of course, already a race winner this year. He won in his very first weekend in the championship at Silverstone, and the one circuit he knew. Here's a replay of a bit of typical Formula 3 racing there. Everybody go for the same corner. Raoul Hyman having to concede. This was earlier on, wasn't it? As
yeah, it was.
I think the lap before, as Meneses got past, and then this is the move that we did see from Alex Albon. So you can see that in that one lap, Meneses had pulled right away, hadn't he, in the number 4 car, and then George Russell, as you can say, simultaneously attacking Pietro Fittipaldi. So some good scraps going on here as they try to pick up some points.
And what that proved there and gave graphic indication of what happens is when you are in a little fight and you're making a move, you know, the car in front is like, it's you know, really good news, isn't it? Because they're just able to get up the road because they're not having to focus on that at all. Rosenqvist leading then. There is our P3 driver, Callum Eilert, then with the Red Bull livery.
Ooh.
Whoa!
Getting a bit lively then, the car, wasn't it?
He's exactly a second behind Nick Cassidy. That's Mikkel Jensen, though, who's still tucked up behind Charles Leclerc. And to be fair, you know, there have been moments where Mikkel Jensen has really tried, and Leclerc has defended and defended well, and the threat has never really come, has it? And equally so, that from Pommer and also Santino Ferrucci. And Ferrucci was one of the most you know, enjoyable drivers to watch at Portimao, because he was just absolutely determined to go for everything, but doesn't look like he quite has the pace in the car to be able to do so today. No,
feisty Ferrucci. That's definitely a good way to describe his driving. And you know, he's got up there at the start of this race. He's made up a lot of positions. I think he said to him at the start of the race, where was he, back in the 7th row of the grid, wasn't he? If he said at the start of the race you'll finish 7th, I think he'd have taken that.
Yeah.
But you never know. He's got Arjun Maini behind him, though, who's also been quick. But yeah, there's nothing between these guys. 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th positions, all lapping pretty much the same lap times as one another here. And even if you're a 10th quicker or 10th and a half quicker, it's difficult to find a way through here at the Nürburgring, which is why we haven't really seen Giovinazzi making any more progress. They're still there in 10th place. We saw that twitch from Callum Eilert. You know, he's on for his first podium in car racing, his first podium in Formula 3 in his first season.
Yep.
Yet he is still pushing like crazy to try and catch Nick Cassidy for second place, rather than sitting there thinking, I'll be happy with that, as Marcus Pommer just has a little show over the nose down the inside to Mikkel Jensen there. This is the battle for 5th place.
Ferrucci is just waiting to pick up the pieces, isn't he? You can just see that there. Go on, you two, you have a battle, and I'll take advantage of that. So, of course, it's Mikkel Jensen, Marcus Pommer, and Santino Ferrucci running in P5, 6, and 7. There is the Marcus Pommer car then, in the middle of the two Muka Motorsport liveried machines, and that, of course, plays into the hands a little bit of Charles Leclerc, who's able just to gap Mikkel Jensen a little bit as they take the curbs through the NGK chicane, and never ceases to amaze me just how much curb they take through that chicane with these very, very sophisticated Formula 3 cars.
But very strong cars
yes.
as well, aren't they? Very strong. Really see them braking. As we see Jensen running wide, sort of being sucked into his line, and also going a bit wide was Marcus Pommer there. Not quite so lairish. And here's another bit of action. Raoul Hyman now having caught back up to the number 4 car of Meneses. I'm not sure he made contact with the back of the Jagonia IAM car, but he had to get on the brakes pretty sharpish there and almost sent himself into the barriers. So Raoul Hyman having a battling performance, but it's dropped him back now to 16th place. So that's why he's suddenly fallen away from the top 12. Marcus Pommer almost trying to warm his tyres up here, isn't he? I can't get past you, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and unnerve you.
Yes.
You know, if you just keep seeing my nose in your mirrors. Twitch there from behind as well from Ferrucci. They're all pushing like crazy here as we go to the final third of the race.
Well, it's absolutely extraordinary to watch, isn't it? There's Leclerc going through, there's Mikkel Jensen, then it's Marcus Pommer, then it is Santino Ferrucci with Argemini behind. And, well, it is. Leclerc is almost rubbing his hands a bit, isn't he? Because whilst these are all battling, he's able just to gap them a little bit. There's Marcus Pommer then, who's in the middle of that little gaggle, if you like. And they're beginning to line up behind Ferrucci now as well, with Arjun Maini and Lance Stroll and, of course, Antonio Giovinazzi also.
That's right. Alex Albon up to 12th, George Russell up to 13th now. And both going pretty quickly, particularly Albon, 41.8 for him. He is, I think I'm right in saying, yes, the quickest man on the track at the moment, with in that first sector, with no exception. So very quick first sector for Albon. His lap times 1:23.4s as well, so comparable with those ahead of him. But he's got 2 or 3 seconds to try and make up plus positions to gain if he wants to get into the points. But I wouldn't be too surprised if we see that signature car of Alex Albon getting onto the back of this group in the not too distant future. Trouble is, if you do have a go and try and get points, you are of course always having to be mindful of the fact that there's another race later on today.
Yes.
And another race tomorrow, and you know, yes, you want to go for it and try and get the points, but you've also got to look after that car for the other 2 races, not damage it too much. Alex Rosenquist has crossed the line, a 1:22.0 for him. 0.40, 0.48 for Cassidy, almost matches his lap time, and a 1:22.053 for Callum Ilott. So within 13 thousandths of a second of each other, the top 3 are now lapping. The gap's pretty much then obviously staying the same between them. There is Giovinazzi then, who is second in the championship, 5 wins this year, 17 podiums. Been a great year for the Italian.
22 seconds between P3 and P4.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
It is, when you consider that, you know, in most qualifying sessions, for most circuits, for most of the year, you've had probably a second a lap is all that's been between the top 20 cars.
Amazing.
So,
the top 3 are the ones that are lapping in the 122s and the very low 122s, and then we get up to the, you know, it's the 123.7 from Leclerc last time round, 123.2s from Jensen and Pommer. So it's the reason that gap is increasing between P3 and P4 to the margin that it is.
there we go, just about in the background now. We can see Alex Albon in 12th place, so he's starting to reel them in. Again, in the first sector, he's 3 or 4 tenths quicker than the pack ahead. Catching and passing, though, might be a different story for him, as we see Santino Ferrucci there in the Muka Motorsport car, the Berlin-based team. So again, racing in their home country, not exactly their part of Germany. But Muka Motorsport also run team in the DTM Championship, having a much Stronger year in many respects, at least consistency-wise. It's the team that Felix Rosenqvist used to drive for and didn't have a particularly happy season last year, although his teammate Lucas Auer, who's just got pole position, in fact, his maiden pole position in DTM before this race started. Lucas Auer drove for Mirka Motorsport, got on the podium a couple of times last year and did a good job to finish 4th in the championship.
Super slow-mos there, showing you just how much curb they do take and how the actual shape of the tyre deflects as all that pressure is put through. And, well, Santino Ferrucci right on the back of Marcus Pommer now. That's the battle that's going on for P6. That's where Marcus Pommer sits, and Santino Ferrucci very, very close to him. But equally, Pommer trying to keep Mikkel Jensen within target sight as well, but he's just having to focus on defend from the Santino Ferrucci car. And Ferrucci then, the moment, as you say, he can be quicker, he can match the lap time. It's finding a way past, isn't it? And he's never, truthfully, looked close to being able to do that.
Yeah, out of the bit curver and through Hatson back, Pommer definitely went away by about half a car length or so. But in the tighter, twistier section, through the Mercedes arena at the start of the lap, he looked like he was struggling a bit to get the car out of the corners, and Ferrucci was quicker at the first sector.
That's the new Artline engineering car, isn't it? That's being driven by Harold Schlegel-Milch. We can see there, and, well, about to be passed by Felix Rosenqvist, the Prema Power Team driver who, well, had a phenomenal race from the very start, hasn't he? And we're into final 5 laps or so of this race. Another fantastic performance from Felix Rosenqvist thus far. Hasn't put a foot wrong, and furthermore has been lapping so quickly. In fact, his last lap, Chris, on 1:21.790 in comparison to everyone else in 22s and 23s.
Yeah, Felix has been the best qualifier this year on average. 4th on the grid was his average at the start of the year, and he's got that down to sort of third and a half on the grid if you look at the average in recent rounds. So his qualifying started well and has got even better. There was an issue with the car right at the start of the season where he looked like he was going to get a triple pole at Silverstone, and then there was a slight technical issue with the car, the dimensions of the car, so he's excluded from the second qualifying session at start at the back. But if you discount that one, you look at his pure performances, he's been the best qualifier, and it stood him in good stead, which is why he's on course for his 10th race win of the season.
Just saw a shot of Alban really pressuring Seta Kamara, as you predicted would happen. Alex Alban was setting lap times that would put him onto the back of Seta Kamara, and that indeed is the case. The closing stages of this race. Last driver into the points, of course, is Antonio Giovinazzi, who is running in P10. Then it is Seta Kamara, Alban and George Russell running P12 and P13.
Yeah, Alex Alban, who's based in the UK, but runs with a Thai national licence. And another former European karting champion in KF3, just like Callum Eilert, who runs in 3rd place, but has some car racing experience. He's a rookie in terms of F3, but he raced a couple of seasons in Formula Renault. Got his maiden win last year in the Formula Renault Euro Cup, which he finished 3rd overall. And Alex has had some really good performances this year. As I say, one of the top rookies, and currently 6th overall in the championship. Charles Leclerc is the best rookie in the overall championship, 3rd. George Russell 5th in the standings. Then you've got Alex in 6th place. There is Charles Leclerc, the Monegasque driver, just looking to grind out the points really at the moment, because he doesn't look to be in a position to challenge for race wins or really podiums of late, does he? But
no,
just making the most of what he's got at the moment. He has won 4 races this season. As I say, it's been a bit sparse of late. And there is Antonio Giovinazzi, who looks like he might just have to settle for that single point in 10th place, which is going to be a real blow for the championship for him. And, you know, he'll lose out by 24 points to Felix Rosenqvist. So it's going swimmingly for the Swede at the head of the field.
So as the pack turn in then, and that is the back marking car being passed now by Callum Eilert, the back marking car of Schlegel-Milch. And you were saying earlier on what an impressive performance this is from Callum Eilert when you consider, you know, rookie into the championship. Sat with him on the plane coming back from Portimao. Super young guy as well.
Yeah, and he's one of the drivers that you see always in and around the car in the Carlin awning, is always paying attention to what's going on.
You made that point, actually, yes, that he spends a lot of time in the paddock, doesn't he? He's not...
with the team, No, seems to be very hands-on, learning a lot. And learning, like the rookies out there, he's learning all the circuits as well. I had a chat with him. I said, why do you think it's clicked at this circuit a bit more than some of the others?
Sure.
And he said, well, I've always loved driving this on my PlayStation. He's always, he's got a bit of experience. I said, do you do that much? Do you try and learn the circuits by, going on simulators and computer games? A little bit, not that much really. You just learn as you go. But it does have, a bit of a help to at least understand which way the corners are going to go.
Yeah.
So it's a circuit which he just gels with. He doesn't particularly know why, but he's gone really well here. And as I say, he has been improving his performances, but not necessarily getting the results. And he's had some good runs, hasn't he? At Spa, he was just off the podium in fourth. He had a 5th place earlier in the season. He was in the points in the first round at Silverstone. In fact, he's very often, he's picked up points in races, but in the lower end of the top 10. So Callum going well here. He's the top rookie in 3rd place. Rookies are 3rd, 4th and 5th in this race. Callum Ilott, Charles Leclerc and Mikkel Jensen.
Just as we reach the closing stages of this race, I just feel that Giovinazzi is really, really pushing Lance Stroll now. Lance Stroll's going to be very, very difficult to overtake. Lance Stroll himself, of course, running in P9. He's not going to be prepared to give that position away to Antonio Giovinazzi, but just of the last few shots that we've seen, I've just felt Giovinazzi has looked a little bit more aggressive. Lance Stroll, of course, see the Ferrari Driver Academy on the side of the car there. It's in fact the final lap, so Felix Rosenqvist then, who has a margin of some 6.1 seconds over P2 Nick Cassidy, and then Callum Ilott a further second behind. But it's been another masterful performance, hasn't it, from Felix Rosenqvist?
Absolutely. Some quick mental arithmetic. I reckon he'll be 58.5 points clear of Giovinazzi in the championship. Now, if he ends this weekend 75 points or more ahead of his nearest rival, he'll have won the title. It's not inconceivable the Swede could wrap it up here, and nobody's going to be able to match the number of wins that he's had this season, should they be tying on points with him.
And to be fair, this, with him finishing P1 and Giovinazzi, as you say, just banking 1 point, is really helping him towards that potential, isn't it? Yeah,
Leclerc 4th, Dennis out of the points, as we know, so it couldn't have gone much better really for the Swede. But as we've seen so often, he's got pole, he's got a good start, and he's just been in a league of his own, and very, very consistent of late as well. So Felix Rosenqvist looking good here as we go into the closing stages of the race. He's suddenly 6 seconds clear of Nick Cassidy. But a word for Nick Cassidy, this is only his second outing of the season. He was out at Portimao. He qualified well, but the races weren't too kind to him as the flag comes out and Felix Rosenqvist takes his 10th win of the season here. A great job by the Swede to extend his championship lead. Nick Cassidy, in only his second outing this season, gets a podium spot. And Callum Ilott, for the first time in his short but impressive car racing career, takes his first podium in 3rd place. This is the battle for 4th. Getting tight, Dave.
Yeah, Marcus Pommer there, and certainly the one under pressure now is Charles Leclerc as well from Mikkel Jensen. Is anything going to change as they head towards the timing line? I don't think it's going to, but it was a valiant effort right at the end.
Absolutely, nose to tail as they cross the line there. Leclerc and Jensen, a 10th of a second between them, but Leclerc hangs on for crucial points in 4th place. Jensen 5th there, 2nd and 3rd in the rookie classification. Marcus Pommer with another good drive. He struggled at the start of the year with Motor Park, who, as I say, new team to Formula 3 European racing. But with all of his experience and Motor Park's experience, they've been competitive in the last few rounds. And it's another good drive by Marcus in 6th place. A good drive as well from Santino Ferrucci from 13th on the grid to finish in 7th place. Arjun Maini, who had a very good start as well. He came from 10th to finish in 8th. Lance Stroll 9th. Antonio Giovinazzi will stay 2nd in the championship with that single but maybe crucial point for 10th spot. But Felix Rosenqvist with a dominant performance there, Dave.
Absolutely stellar performance from Felix Rosenqvist, who, with all his experience, well, that was proven during the course of the race, did not put 1 foot wrong. And Willie Ross in there, the Prema Power team, absolute class act, Felix Rosenqvist, and, well, he's banked another maximum points haul. And we will see him on the top step of the podium once again. So the Prema Power team congratulating themselves down there, and Done a great job in terms of giving Felix Rosenqvist the very, very best that they can, and he's used every single bit of it, hasn't he?
They won the title 2 years ago with Raffaele Marciello. He's moved up to GP2 now. They won it last year with Esteban Ocon. Could they win it this year with Felix Rosenqvist, who's, don't forget, in his first season with that team, it's been quite some force. And 6.5 seconds he wins by in the end. His Prema Power Team teammate Nick Cassidy there in second place. And mixed fortunes, of course, because they lost their another championship contender early on with damage to the car for Jake Dennis. Third place to Callum Ilott, fourth place to Leclerc, fifth place to Jensen, sixth to Pommer, Ferrucci seventh, Arjamaini eighth, Lance Stroll ninth, Giovinazzi 10th, the other point scorer. Seti Mara just outside the points in 11th place. And there you can see the rest of the results on the screen. The only non-finisher, Jake Dennis. They got the car back out, did some laps, so it looks good for later on, but they decided to call it a day when it was pretty obvious he wasn't going to score any points. So Felix Rosenqvist gives a high five to Nick Cassidy. Very likeable guy is Felix, and so all this experience in Formula 3. But it doesn't necessarily get any easier because the competition in this championship, Dave, seems to get tougher and tougher every season.
You're absolutely right. And Callum Ilott will be absolutely thrilled, won't he? I know I keep droning on about this point, but I think I should make it 28.6, the margin between P3 and P4. That's a huge gap, Chris. Huge gap. So Felix Rosenqvist takes the win from Nick Cassidy, and Callum Ilott then P3. Then it was Leclerc, Jensen, Pommer, Ferrucci, Maini, Stroll, and Giovinazzi, and super slow-mo of the master at work.
Yeah,